All right, you ready?
Born ready.
You need to stop saying that. That's five. Yeah, I have 5 episodes. You starting with that, and I always cut it out.
That's totally fine.
All right, ready? Let's get going. Nick, welcome back to another episode of the Nick and Justin Show, episode number 13.
Yes,
Let's
yes,
go.
yes. So exciting. Another time for us to talk about everything from your NCAA career to me being unemployed.
Fun stuff. It's great. Great. And season's coming up, and you have to do all the paperwork, BS, and it's so great. I'm not going crazy at all.
Everyone loves some good paperwork.
So what you got today? What are your topics?
All right. One of mine is what's called proof of personhood with WorldCoin. It's a crypto project. Another
Okay.
one is peer-to-peer money. So like things like Venmo and things like that. And if we have more time, I might throw one at the end. What about you?
Okay. I got 2 questions stemming from one article. So, question one was, are generational walls breaking down? And how do you keep a heated conversation civil?
Ooh, that last one can be very spicy. That's for sure.
So you want to go first to kick it off?
Yeah, definitely. I'll kick it off. So there's a new crypto project that just launched. So the founder of OpenAI, or the current CEO of ChatGPT, Sam Altman, he co-founded this other blockchain company that's called Tools for Humanity. The project that they're launching is called WorldCoin. And what they're trying to solve is what's called proof of personhood. But it's not without having some serious controversy all over Twitter and a lot of the news articles. And so I'll give you some background on what it is. And then I would love to hear your thoughts on what you actually think of the project.
All right, let's go. Take it away.
Okay. So Tools for Humanity on their website, the way that they describe themselves as they're a startup that aims to create separate IDs for every living person by scanning parts of their eye. The scanning devices are these small orbs that reads a user's iris, creating a unique digital identity that is then saved on the blockchain. So when I first thought of this concept and thought, it was very similar to a blockchain version of Clear. Remember when
Mm-hmm.
you got enrolled with Clear, you had to scan your eyes, you scanned your fingers. I think there was one other way of doing it, but those were two of the ways that they can authenticate who you are as a person. So Tools for Humanity is doing this on the blockchain. The goal that they are trying to accomplish with this technology in a lot of parts of the world that's like outside the United States, outside of Europe, people don't have forms of ID, people don't have passports. The ability to authenticate who a person is a little bit harder than it is here in the United States, for example. So that was the area that they targeted first, I think, for two reasons. One, it's a larger need. Two, there's a lot less regulation when it comes to crypto.
I was going to say that there's a lot of less stuff you can get away with.
So when they launched, there was a article maybe like a month ago. They got 150 million ish dollars for funding. So they're really, it was like $115 million funding round. Then they got other funding on top of that. I think they're at 150 right now. They launched publicly a lot of their access and things like that this past week. And here's some numbers just to give you an idea of how fast this is already spread. WorldCoin in its beta phase already has 2 million people, 150 of which are in Spain. The Spain piece is interesting because Spain actually has some privacy laws. So they're starting to navigate the policy that's necessary in that area. In order for them to fully expand out that number, where they're trying to hit 5x that number in a very, very short time frame, they're doing these pop-up locations to scan your eyes. So they roll out these like orbs that exist. In the United States, there's 6 of them. There's New York, San Francisco, Miami, and I think some in LA. And they're going to put them in 35 different cities across 20 different countries. I'll take a pause right here. I could dive into some more specifics of it if you're more interested in that part. If not, we can totally skip that part. But what are your initial
We can
thoughts of
dig into
this?
it, but I don't know. I think of a certain level of Minority Report for some reason.
Expand on that because I don't
Really?
remember exactly what Minority Report was about.
It was pretty much just identifying aspect of like your eyeball and using that identity piece and um can reading into the person's memory bank because of their eyes. So it's like a little bit of, but they're mainly the identity is from the eye. Is when you walk into somewhere that can be identified through your eyes.
Isn't there also a Black Mirror episode that does something similar?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Uh, okay, before I actually think about it, so when you buy the coin though, what is you have to buy the coin to get access to start creating your eyeball ID, your personification ID in a sense.
So the onboarding works. You download the World app. They're calling it the World app. You go to one of these orbs, you scan your eye, and then they'll link the unique identifier from the blockchain to your app. And so wherever you have that app ID, that is now tied to you as a person. The coin piece, so when you scan your eye, you could be gifted World Coin. And there's a couple of other ways where there's rewards with the coin. So if you, let's say, facilitate one of these orbs to scan people, you could get a commission for scanning people on their behalf. There's a couple of other ways that they're leveraging the coin, but if you're maybe trying to use the coin from a stock perspective, I'm sure there's people that are buying it on some exchange, and as people are starting to use it and the price goes up, they're just going to arbitrage the price on the stock side. But I think the World Coin piece right now is used more as a transactional currency within the ecosystem.
Oh, okay. Oh, dude, it sounds cool.
Mm-hmm.
It just sounds so scary only because the blockchain's more it's decentralized and more public. So what's the security measures of everyone seeing it? I know you can have identifying number, no one really knows who you are, but it's still decentralized, right? Correct me if I'm wrong with my block technology. Everyone could see it, kind of work through it. Am I going crazy? Is how I understand crypto from Bitcoin or something like that? Or is it completely different?
Your concern is very much right in line with a lot of the stuff that was happening online right after it got announced. They built it on top of Ethereum, and the founder of Ethereum, Vitalik, I actually don't know his full name right now, but he posted this really long blog about everything that's a potential risk with the protocol. And from a privacy standpoint, what ended up happening pretty quick is there's a black market for IDs right now. So what someone can do is they can scan their eye, they receive their unique ID, and then they can sell that unique ID for what some articles stated were as low as $30, which could be a lot in some countries. And so another person can then have the identification of someone else and use that for whatever areas they're using WorldCoin for that authentication.
I feel like there would be a lot more fraud with that, even though it's an iris type of, I don't know, because can it just pay for the ID and then kind of associate that ID? Let's say you buy my ID number, but you associate my ID number with your eye. I don't know, whatever that may be.
I think the concept. So I looked into it a little bit, and I'm sure there's so much complexity when it comes to a lot of this technology. When I looked into Clear, my understanding for Clear is when they scan all of your biometric information, that's saved within their repositories so that every time you go to, let's say, the airport and you scan, they have a reference during that like live scan of this is Nick. So it's not anonymized at all in their systems.
But it's also governed within a company, so no one can just go into it. So that's other database companies that just keeping the place security, but you're just kind of now putting up open to the world in a sense.
Correct. I think with new technology, any kind of new technology, there comes some risks and things that people don't initially think of. I would be curious around what the incremental improvements will be to either the protocol or the system or the process. to fix some of these problems that are starting to come up. It's hard to launch a product and not know everything that could potentially go wrong. By them at least pushing this out there, they're starting to see where things are going wrong, and they can now identify those things to fix. It's very similar to when Clubhouse was still in private beta and they needed invites. There was a black market for invites. Of course, we're not talking about the authentication or the proof of someone's unique, information, and they're not using it for finances or medical or things like that. So the downstream effects maybe aren't as severe. But I don't think anyone would have thought right out of the bat that someone was going to be black market selling invites to Clubhouse. So seeing
that wasn't the effect.
It wasn't the intention.
It wasn't the thought process of, oh, this could possibly happen into this kind of vehicle.
Exactly. I'd be interested to watch. There's a couple of other companies that are doing something similar, and they authenticate differently around how they want to do everything. Some of the things people were mentioning was it's reliant on where these orbs are. So you have a hardware requirement that needs to be distributed across full countries in order to scan enough people to hit a certain tipping point where it becomes useful or actually can be used in some way
that
or
in
fashion.
Itself is just cryptocurrency in itself that's still being tried to implement. Ethereum, Bitcoin, it took so long for it. It's still in the process of, is this a valuable currency? Is a viable currency?
If you're thinking about it from a currency standpoint, right? I think a lot of people looked at crypto as a stock or an equity, but
not a functionality.
Not as a functionality, and not realizing that the underlying coin can be used as the mechanics that move things, not as the piece that's actually being traded and holding the value. Companies that are going to be able to separate those two from one another, I think, will then be able to actually unlock something of a use case for the underlying piece. If they don't separate those two, then it comes back to just everyone going and trying to buy the coin, letting people kind of have some usability for it.
Kind of a stock kind of purpose instead of actually a functionality purpose. I am not in the game of it, but have you seen a coin yet that's separated, that's been successful? I really don't. I have not seen it. That's why I'm asking, because I haven't really been in that sphere.
I can't think of any of them off the bat. And I think it could be because there's complexity in designing it. The most simplified version that I think, crypto, blockchain, all these terms are super complicated, especially when you're trying to tie real world value to a digital item. Some of the people that are heavily involved in the crypto game, when they look at crypto, they look at it from the value it holds within the ecosystem, not the value that it holds in our world, and then separating it at that level. An example would be video games. And the best video game that I can think of is World of Warcraft, because I've played it so much. And there might be a video game that you might be able to relate this to. So in World of Warcraft, they have a gold system. You kill some item, you get gold in return, you collect a bunch of gold, you could go buy potions, weapons, whatever you might need. Gold within that ecosystem has a value. And within the World of Warcraft ecosystem, they have an auction house, they have everything there. So a lot of the functionality that exists here in the real world exists in their world, but on a different currency. But there's a black market where you can actually buy gold with cash. So World of Warcraft doesn't facilitate it. There's people that basically farm gold in the game. You could purchase it, and then in the game, they'll somehow make a transaction to, give you so much gold for so much cash. But then once you transfer it into there, a lot of the times you're never thinking about transferring it back out. So it still exists within the system. No one's monitoring what the ratio is between $1 and 10 gold pieces in World of Warcraft. And if that changes to 20 gold and $1, people are trying to arbitrage that. That arbitrage is where we're seeing everyone always focusing when it comes to a lot of these crypto projects right now. rather than looking at, in the example, it would be what you could do with it, World of Warcraft, with the currency once you get it. Does that explain it
No, I
well?
get it. No, I get it. I get what you mean. It's an input, but there's no output to it. And how can you have it a two-way talking type of street versus just a one-way street? And that there's a disconnect there. No, I don't. It's
Whatever's built just has to have so much value in the coin itself that there's no incentive to bring it back to the USD.
Yeah.
Or the
Or into
majority of people
functionality.
have no incentive to bring it back to USD.
So then saying this, keeping the identities of that altcoin, what was it called? World Power, World Power,
World coin.
World. Okay. So for World Coin, are you saying that we're trying to now not output back identity into the real world, and that's how our identity is, and it's going to be one centralized identity for the entire world? Is that the goal of this coin? Because it sounds like it. How
The goal of the
Bitcoin
coin
was,
is so
or
that you can authenticate yourself in some way, shape, or form. In Europe, there's a service. Oh my goodness.
because I can see it happening only because of how easy to fake yourself in so many social media platforms, everything else, the blue check marks that you kind of need to kind of have that importance now. Once you get at a higher level, you're like, oh, I'm getting frauded and fraudulent or copied or whatever, and there is a need for it, but
Proof
I
of personhood
feel
makes sense,
yeah.
especially in a digital world. For example, when you're signing up for a service and they ask you to hold up your ID and they scan like the front of the ID or the back of the ID. That's a really janky way of validating that because I have my ID in my hand, it's actually Nick Ayala.
Mm-hmm.
What WorldCoin is trying to do is create a digital way to verify that the person who's doing something is actually that person.
Well, it's also really weird when I was like last time I traveled to, side note on trying to verify that person and giving a picture ID. When I was traveling to Lisbon last summer, they took a picture and then came back and went back to the States before I had what was it? Before I had global entry, they just stood up, took a picture, and they said I didn't have to pull out my passport when I came back to the States. And the same kind of concept, but now it's kind of being housed in your country's database, which also still can get exposed or corrupted or stolen. But yeah, I just know where my data is going. I feel like in my mind as a safety aspect, I still know where my data will be into the government database versus the decentralized database where it is monitored to a certain point. I think that's the one I'm gonna keep on hearing going back into when you hear about the ID, pick and pull from the data, and then having that how can that do a two-way talk? So it is kind of breaking down right now.
You remember getting scanned in Lisbon. I don't remember where I actually took my facial scan for my passport. Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember when I stepped on the plane, they made us do a biometrical face scan.
I remember, but it must have been when I got my passport 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago, because it's going to expire soon, that they took it because I have the little biometric logo on my passport and I can
Yes.
go to other countries and go into that line and they just take a picture of my face. The difference with that system versus a WorldCoin system, they have some reference point that's tied to the passport and then they're validating it at the time of entry. So it's almost like a two-factor authentication happening to get you through. WorldCoin doesn't have the 2 points because it's someone that has some long string ID, just validating it. But there's nothing now to tie back the person that is holding it at the time to that ID.
Yeah.
I think they're going down the right path. I think there's a lot of things like with any new technology that need to be worked out. Because they have 2 million people already in their database, I think that gives them a really good sample size to
And see if it works or not.
yeah, to experiment with it versus if you have no one using it, it's hard to test with no sample size.
So when you're talking about all this new technology, I know we talked about it in the past podcast. What's the should we be making or not during the AI talks? But it was funny because when I was watching Oppenheimer, I watched Oppenheimer last weekend.
Hmm.
And then me and my girlfriend were breaking it down. It's like, I can't believe they would make this, and then at the end of the day, sometimes they're scientists. They just wanted to make it, and the after effects they never really thought about until after the first test, or after halfway through. Some of the scientists were trying to figure out like this is dangerous,
Wait, give me a
you
quick
know.
spiel. What is Oppenheimer about? What were they
So
building?
Oppenheimer is the guy who built the first atomic bomb.
Okay. What was the
So
motivation to
Matt
do
and
that?
was forward to having it because as of then, the Nazis a few months leeway on discovering how to discover atomic energy and nuclear energy and stuff like that. And so that's when they kind of started their nuclear projects. So, and Oppenheimer was the first one to figure it out and use it against Japan. When they finished, it took about 3 to 4 years, and they were about to use it on Germany, but that's when they surrendered, and then that's when they used it on Japan, which is insane. And we're like, and there's a lot of protests and from the scientists inside the Manhattan Project. This is from the movie, just to kind of showing I'm not historical facts, but it was just interesting to see the dynamics of holy crap, we're building it, we can do it, is this possible? And then later down the line when it's about to be done, it's like, I don't think we should have made this possible. So pretty much it was the modern day Prometheus. And Prometheus back then was the god who gave man fire, pretty much. And that just kind of snowballed. Is this a new wave of Prometheus in a sense with AI with Altman and now this identity again? It's just the thought process of we can make it. Damn. And it's always a funny thought. It's just crazy because you just didn't know. You just never knew. And you're just kind of building it and seeing if it works. And you want to make it work and crap. And I'm circling back topics because we did talk about this in the past episodes, but it was just very interesting because I just saw it in a movie and you're like, I can't believe they really would think about this. And they're like, well, you don't. You just want to get it done and you want to prove you can build it.
It's hard to know anytime you create anything what the other side of the coin could be.
Mm-hmm.
You could go at it with the best of intentions, but there's always going to be someone that will look at it from the worst of intentions.
Oh, yeah. Because as of right now, like what for WorldCoin, you can go to Africa and just you can just see it. You just not. I don't think this identifier system, the government. I was with a bro who was trying to open up a business over there with another Tanzanian, and it was the government system was so long. There's no defined structure. It was so chaotic. The mailing system was like when I was on the bus, that's how like, people would drop off mail from villages. They would just give it to the bus driver, hoping it'll get there. And I was like, that's it? Like, you just hope it gets there? It's like, yeah, we don't have really a mail person. So you kind of give it on the bus, and the bus will take it and be nice and take it to where it has to go. I'm like, is that how it really goes? I'm like, damn, that's pretty like in this world, in the first world was archaic in my thought. I was like, wow, that's that I don't even have this developed. It is crazy. And this is what it means of not having that much of development in just other countries. So having something where people are making that makes their life easier, it's pretty dope in their eyes. But then you're thinking about this is great. Then what are the consequences after it really happens? You never know. So that's how I'm viewing world corn right now. Is that other countries are in need of it, not like the more developed countries. But what does that mean now for the other countries that are using it now? Might get there's a possibility of abuse in a sense.
The jury's still out on the downstream effects.
Yeah,
It's
and we
being
won't
built
know.
with the best of intentions, and only time will tell whether or not these privacy concerns, any kind of loopholes that are found, how fast it can be triaged and resolved to where it's like a viable infrastructure technology for society, or ends up kind of fading off and being replaced by some other technology that comes up in the future.
Yeah, we'll see. All right. But yeah.
All right, let's dive into your first topic.
Okay. So the first, it's only one article, but it's them two questions. So I'm going to talk about the article. Let me pull it up. It was a cosmetic company hiring a secondary board of Gen Zers and millennials to give advice to this current board of directors. And the article is about how Body Shop asked the Gen Zers to join their board and give like more advice about how to navigate current situations. So, kind of start from there. A little backstory: Body Shop is a British cosmetic skincare company. It was founded in 1976, and in the article, they kind of talked about how the workforce now is about 38% Gen Z and millennials, about 40% of the world population is under 25, and how the realization of the lack of vision and voice of the younger generation. So they created a secondary board to help combat this. As of right now, do you want me to keep going, or do you want to have your thoughts as of this?
Let me try to summarize it to make sure I understand.
Correct.
The Body Shop, a cosmetic company,
Correct.
is out of touch with their millennial and Gen Z audience. Correct. So they brought in a secondary board to try to hear what they could fix.
Correct.
Keep going.
We're good. Okay, we're good. Okay. So the purpose of the secondary board, the brand calls it the Youth Collective, was a leadership team that no one over 30 is allowed to join.
Wait, can I join this? Is it open to the public?
No, it's maybe. I haven't really looked how to apply for this.
Keep going.
But so the Body Shop recruited under 30-year-olds for an external B Corp firm. The parameters was to crack the code of sent youth. At first it was a disaster because it just brought everyone in under 30, and it was becoming a major bitch fest pretty much on saying how this is stupid and business sucks and it's ruining the environment. So it pretty much is a bitch fest of, again, very, very big business is bad.
Okay.
So they took a step back and they took in board members who were more business oriented in that generation, who wanted to create businesses, but also understood that they have to do it in better, kind of efficient, in the philosophies of a B corporation way. And to backtrack, a B corporation is pretty much a stamp of approval that kind of shows and demonstrates that the highest verified standards for social and environmental performance and transparencies. So yes, and that became the topic of our generational walls starting to break down, and kind of putting ego aside and having the humility of saying, I am not part of this generation anymore and I need help.
So while you were going through that, I looked up the Youth Collective, and just reading the headline, introducing our Youth Collective. We're bringing young people into our boardroom. The world is in crisis, and we think young people are part of the solution. And then it talks about all the statistics that you were talking about earlier. They definitely illustrate a reasons for everyone to work together, because the world's in crisis, Sheo.
It's fucking crazy, bro. And okay, I know we're joking about crisis, but if you really think about it, it's such a bad disconnect, man, from every single generation. Again, our generation says we're lazy, and maybe I kind of probably was guilty of saying this new generation we're a bunch of fucks. And it's kind of stemming in this article and in my job. I saw it just kind of, okay, this is not, it's starting to become a little bit in the middle of me and now the younger generation, and what the old is, and stop kind of yappering, but yet being more proactive on how to fix it. It was a crazy thought. And when I saw this, I was like, wow, this is kind of dope.
I think it's a great initiative. It's hard to work. People gravitate towards the familiar. Age is one spectrum where it creates some difference in perspective each time, which is why I think people gravitate towards kind of their group-ish of age range. And then within each group, right, there's all the different dynamics. You got politics, you have Republicans and Democrats and liberals and conservatives and people about the environment, or people that care about money, or right, it just goes in so many different ways. All of those things make it hard to then try to cross through all of them to get them all aligned and to discuss different things. Also, I think because it's an older company, resisting to try to relate to the upcoming market will make that company irrelevant. Mm-hmm. And so the walled garden has to go down almost for their own survival, more so than wanting to maybe genuinely connect to that demographic.
Yeah. And I also thought of it this way, was at a certain point they are on their way out, and are we going to hoard these leadership kind of positions that that the generation needs to figure it out again? If you can get people inside that board, maybe that's not the intention of what they did this for, but just what I thought about is that instead of saying figure it out when I leave, here we'll mentor you so you kind of know what's going on, versus hoarding that position and saying you won't be getting until I leave. And then if you take it the reverse, you know that it's going to transition pretty well as a company standpoint, because we have people who know the ins and outs of said company now, versus I can walk away with peace instead of who's going to take over.
Have you ever seen the movie with Anne Hathaway and Robert De Niro, The Intern?
Yeah. Love that movie, dude. That's my favorite movie.
It's a great movie. Oh. I think the piece that you were talking about with the body shop is that concept in reverse. So rather than a young CEO gaining perspective from someone that's in an older generation, we see a lot in society. It's the older generation that has moved up the ranks, needing the insight from the younger generation and trying to bridge that gap from experiences, perspectives, things like that.
Oh, I think it's interesting. Have you had that yet? Have you had, since you are kind of now, when you had a job, because now, unemployed, RIP, but when you had to manage a team and the younger generation come fresh out of college, like about be 10 years older, younger than you, and did you see that? What did you see between that gap?
The best example was probably my time during Clubhouse. So I was, let's say, in the 30-year-old area. Some of the executives were closer to the 40-year-old area. We had team members that were recent grads, so they were like 20 years old. And even within that 20-year gap, there was a ton of different perspectives around what Clubhouse as a service, what value it could bring to each of those different areas and what they're looking for. And in trying to, being someone on the older end of the spectrum, trying to build something and know what someone on the younger end of the spectrum wants, you can only really find out if you truly connect and try to understand what that demographic really cares about. And sometimes that means that you're going to have to suspend your own thoughts, perspectives, and opinions, because that might not be what they truly want. And then from another company perspective, it depends on just who your target customer is and user is. If you're totally okay with it being 30 plus individuals, then you can cater to that area and kind of abandon the rest. It reminds me a little bit of when we saw other apps like Be Real came out, or think about when Snapchat first came out. They were targeting individuals at the high school and college area. And so those opinions are going to matter so much more. But then those companies are also founded by individuals in that age range too. So they understood the dynamics. You didn't need this third party opinion to come in to help refine the lens of what you were building for. I know I ranted a little bit on that.
No, you're good. I love it. No, because I have my personal reflection on this was, as I'm getting older, turning 31, and I'm bringing people who are just 18 out of high school and having that. It was easier to manage when I was younger because I felt like I could easily play Big Brother, like only a couple years away, that could be super relatable. Now I'm a decade away pretty much. Yeah, 21, 31, about 12, 13 years with fresh 18-year-olds coming in. Like going to college and experiencing it now, they instead of viewing my age as I can play Big Brother who can try to mentor them through this, what is now my identity of when they come in? Am I a authoritative figure? It was very different on how can I use now my personal experiences to easily motivate these kids or to be relatable to these kids, it was so much easier back then than it is starting now. And I feel like I have to work harder, and it feels a lot more energy draining, and not in a bad way, but in a tiring way of crap. I have to break down more walls. There, when what I'm realizing is some of these kids are just super introverted more than usual. How do I bring them out their shell? And man, I'm introverted too, dude. So it's just like spending a lot of energy to do it. And it was just a weird thing. It's not wrong. It's nothing wrong about it, but how you going to have that EQ of motivating someone on that standpoint, or understanding their hurt, their happiness, their joy, and just body language of making sure if everything's okay, if they're stressed, reflects so much differently in how. And then if I say it now, is it going to be, oh, dad's saying it, fuck off, versus, oh, hey, big brother said it, I gotta listen. And it was weird to think about that. And I'm still now figuring that out, because I can't play big brother, because I can't be super relatable anymore, because there is a gap that I don't know about. I've experienced, or could be relatable on some sort of level. So yeah, it was that's my rant. So you're all good.
With some of the teams that I had younger team members on, I just leaned into it. I'm the boomer on the team. You teach me what's cool, what's not cool. I'll let you know what was cool back in my day. If there's things that I can provide advice and be big brother, sure. Like, I'm happy, and more than, I'm available for anything that they want. But I just kind of lean into it. If they slacked me something that I didn't understand, I'll be like, hey, old guy here, can you translate that word that you just used? Thank you.
Oh yeah, my boss does it super well, dude. I want to say 50s. I mean, kill me if I say it wrong, but he might be in his 50s. I haven't checked. I'm scared to check. But
Wow.
yeah,
If he hears this and he's in his 40s, he's going to
he's
come
not in his
talk to
40s.
you.
He's definitely not in his 40s. And he's just so good at leaning into. I'm an old guy, dude. I don't know what the hell is going on. He's hella funny when it comes to that stuff, and he plays it very well. So he's been doing it for years, and he still acts like a kid sometimes. It's really dope. So it's a new identity piece that I'm trying to figure out in the career path. But that's why this article kind of resonated with me.
You just got to accept it. Trying to know
No,
everything all the time is not going to work. It's
it's not.
impossible.
So what led to my second question about how to keep a heated debate civil? The golden rules of this collective was that every voice counts. They'll be taken seriously as anyone sitting on a traditional board. We will always listen, but we don't always have to act. I was like, dang. And this is not saying reflection. This is now another personal reflection. How, because you and I had some not heated debates, but we snapped at each other when you're on a high stress level, I'm a high stress level, and we kind of monitor differently, and we still can kind of move along and say, sorry, I fucked up. Or even if you're in a relationship and you're like, oh, this is getting really, really, really heated. We gotta readjust some way, somehow. So I kind of want to hear your take before I go on mine. Is that how do you keep a heated debate or a conversation going in the wrong direction in a negative emotionally way back on track?
I'll break it up into two categories. There's the familiar and unfamiliar. We'll start with familiar because it's easier. Familiar, I mean that coming from, you've been able to build a relationship with the individual, so you kind of know what makes them tick. And after having some time of knowing and being able to read them, having the awareness of being able to see the signals of this person's tapped out is kind of, press off the gas a little bit, versus how to kind of navigate through different things. And with the familiar, you've probably already kind of set some kind of like social contract with the person of how you're going to communicate with them. Whether that's, how transparent you can be, you can let someone know or not, hey, you're being a dick. It's a different level of like cadence with that person than someone that's unfamiliar. Unfamiliar probably would be a business meeting. You probably known someone for, half hour. It could be a really tense topic. And so you have to tiptoe around it very, very differently so that the conversation can still be productive and not just stonewalled on both ends. I think those are the two ways I look at it. and it helps determine how to be the most diplomatic in each of those situations.
Yeah. I kind of want to touch base on the unfamiliar because it was very when me I had a story with me and my boss and it was less than a year work, so we're still trying to feel each other out. And he was stressed. Some people left. I wasn't doing my job to a certain extent. Like I wasn't there was a miscommunication and he kind of just leaned in and he kind of just went off. And this so he was supposed to be doing this, you're supposed to be on your shit. And I was like, fuck this guy. And I was like, and around the water cooler, it was sped back to him because I said, man, fuck this guy, man. I was so mad. I was like, what the fuck do you do? I'm in season. What is this fucking expectation? And it could have been really, really bad if because it did come back to him and I was venting to one of my coworkers. He's like, yeah, you should check on Justin. I think he's hella mad at you. and he was and then me and him just talked. We just talked it out. It's like, hey, I know you're mad at me. I didn't mean it, but these are the expectations of you. I do like you can do a lot and I see you doing a lot. And we just kind of hashed it out and we can't really now present day we can have a lot of hard conversations. He'll tell me to fuck off and I'll tell him to fuck off and we
Let
don't
me pause you real quick. Did he approach you to have the conversation or did you approach him to have that conversation? Because I think it's different from a manager coming to a subordinate versus a subordinate going to their manager.
Mutual because we were both in the room in the office. He was telling me something and then he was like, hey man, you want to talk? I was like, so he brought it up and he let me vent. He knew something was wrong. But he never said, hey, I need to talk to you. He was like, he brought the ball to my court pretty much.
What if he didn't do that? What if you had to try to open that conversation? How do you think it would have went?
I think it would have went equally fine if he was receptive of it. If he wasn't receptive of it, I think that would have been bad.
What if you didn't know if like you don't know if he's going to be receptive or not. So you have to bring it up because you're like frustrated. What would have been your approach?
Just kind of do it and see where it kind of fell and how we talked about if this is the right situation or not. If not, fucking dip. You know, I'm not gonna work for a boss and that won't listening to me as a person, not saying I could bitch about the job, just me as a person and how I'm feeling. And if we can't go to that type of conversation, then that's someone I don't want to work for. And as we talked about, I'm not sure if we had this in the pod or not, but athletic training, kind of job wise, pay depending on where you land, it's pretty much a low across the board, or depending on the setting. Living here in California, it's pretty same across the board. And you're looking for prestige, or you're looking for people to work with that you can really respect and love working with on a day-to-day basis. And I found the latter to that versus finding a Power 5 and building a name and whatever that meant. So if he was receptive to that, that would have been a win still and would have been probably the same exact kind of dynamic we have. And if he kind of just blew me off, then I'll be like, okay, this guy's fucked.
I've had multiple encounters with different managers.
Mm-hmm.
I think most of the time I ended up bringing it up.
Yeah, he did not though. I had managers where I brought stuff up to. So go ahead, finish your story, and then I'll go into mine.
As you were talking, I was thinking through the different managers I've had conversations like this with. The difference in terms of how the end result from that conversation was whether the frustration was about each other or the frustration was about the task that we were both trying to solve. Because I think tensions can rise in both of the two situations of where, look, everyone's just tapped out, the work is freaking hard, or the project itself blew up. Everyone's mad about it, but we need to hash that out about the project. Then there's the other way of we need to hash it out because there's actually different personalities and work styles that's happening between two different individuals. And that's a different, that could spiral, especially if the conversation doesn't go well.
And if it does not go well, you're completely fucked.
Oh, yeah. At that part, it's got to probably start looking for a new job.
And I already knew this was going to be all right because he kind of already had the precursor of, hey, we're leaving our egos at the door, you know? And he also promoted that we're leaving the egos at the door. We can't fight within ourselves. We are family. And he did promote that. So I knew that environment was already safe to be in. Mm-hmm. Because before that spat happened, he already always said, hey, I got your back. pretty much, hey, we can't be mad at each other. We have to. So he set the ground rules pretty quick as soon as he stepped on. That's like how he wanted his philosophy as a team to be, and that helped as well to us to go to each other and talk things through instead of just kind of going off on each other. And those are a big difference. And so I think it also becomes how we open that topic up and how we're going to talk about hard things, because you set the boundaries of it's okay to talk about hard things. I'm pretty sure I said this again on the podcast, but I got fired for one job because there was a miscommunication, and he probably heard things from coworkers that weren't true, but he was pretty mad from what he heard and just reacted. And I quit. And then when I left, I said, "Hey, I hope to repair this relationship outside of this job." And we did that. And really, he's still one of my mentors. I can still talk to him and call him up. But yeah, it was harder for him because he didn't set that. He just went off and then fired. And I'm like, oh fuck. We're like, what's going on? And over time, I had to rebuild that back up from multiple. He was reaching out to me, and it was a two-way street. That how it kind of happened. So yeah, it on that other end, if those ground rules aren't set, it can be very bad and more resentful than it is. Because yeah,
When I think of different managers I've had, or even the type of manager I want to be, I think of that picture where it differentiates between a boss and a leader.
mm-hmm.
The picture of the boss is someone shouting out commands of, it's pulling an object.
Yeah, I remember that image.
Exactly. So there's like someone in the back yelling pull, and so like it's labeled as boss, and then the other one is labeled as leader, and the person is like in the front pulling with them and kind of leading, the group to complete that task. I think a lot of people either fall into one of the two, and there's definitely a different relationship that's built between the individuals pulling and the individuals that are helping guide and direct the group.
I want to add on to that. Another personal experience was that, so on my level, I'm like mid-tier in my level, and my office mate he was at that time lower. So me and him, we do butt heads, and he's one of those. It's one of the weird things. Like if I'm hard on you, I care. It sounds really bad, but if I'm hard on you and I'm nitpicky and I'm a dick, it's because I really see a lot of value in you and I know you can do it. And it's probably very toxic. That's very bad.
It sounds like a very like dad-son relationship.
It is. And that's how I don't know. I kind of had it, and maybe it was bad. Maybe that's when just overly, and this is another learning lesson. And I was hard on him, man. My coworker was like, your expectation of anyone, even yourself, is unrealistic. So you can't hold them to that same expectation. That kind of brought down my walls. And I was like, damn, all right. And I became the more nurturing type of stuff instead of being the hard ass, but I was still nitpicking, but I wasn't doing it in, hey, let's talk it more through. Let's meet down. Like your rehabs aren't going well. What do you got to get done? Let's fix it. Let's get better at it. And you got to be more receptive at it, because he's one of those ones, if we would tell him what to do, he wouldn't execute it, or he wouldn't implement what he learned. And that was like the hardest part. And after we had a hard talk and we reflected all his cases and what went good, what went bad, and he was like, I'm seeing something. And he's killing this rehab right now. He has another rehab and he's killing it hella really, really well. And that athlete's like progressing very well. And to see that now is a very pleasing moment. But yeah, that little talk was, your expectations of what you see in people is probably is unreasonable, and you cannot hold them out to that standard. That was pretty impactful. And I was like, crap, okay, I'm changing some stuff up.
There was like a quote that kind of came to mind. The expectation is perfection, but excellence is acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a mind shift of, you're striving for something, but knowing that it won't result in that, but still be above, the 99% is still okay.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to expect the best of the best from someone. I just think
there's a way to go about it.
Yeah.
And leading off was probably, you can agree with me or disagree, but when I thought about this topic, I thought about how me and my girlfriend talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Early on in the relationship, we had a very heated debate over a topic. She, like, her raising her voice, she was going after me and I was going after her. And I'm not gonna lie, my gout saved me that conversation, bro. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna lie. Hey guys, I got gout, so you get a fun joke, but I just said, yo, my ankle hurts. Can we pause? Because like I was about to cry from the pain. I was like, I can't do this right now. I can't argue and deal with this pain. I gotta deal with one. I'm dealing with this pain right now. And it had to pause on our talk, and then it made me reflect on it. So the reflection point was small little golden rules or ground rules of that we both should have. Um, was that automatically, like, no judging, in the sense that, like, we have to hear each other out. We can't automatically just disprove one topic for the other. We cannot interrupt each other and cut each other off. We have to let each other finish their thought. If we feel like our tone is rising or becoming more aggressive, we either pause, take a break, or just breathe for a minute before we resume. And then at the end of the day, if we both walk away not agreeing, that's fine, but we do have to respect each other's point of view. That was like our four things, and every hard topic kind of fell in that kind of boundary, because we don't agree on everything, but we do respect on each other's views and kind of derive from each other and understand each other. And that's why I was like, oh shit, that's so yeah. So out of the conversation, that's what I had when I heard about the golden rules of the board, and that's, oh crap, that's how I usually talk with my boss, talk with my significant other. So I know you and I talk as well, so that's why I thought it was very interesting. How about you? What if you have that type of stuff?
There's probably one ground rule that we have in our relationship is what has been said cannot be unsaid. And that becomes the baseline for a majority of the conversation. And so it creates a lot of, if there is a topic that can potentially become pretty contentious, we both take a lot of time to state what we say when we say it. And so the cadence of the conversations end up slowing down naturally because we both understand that ground rule, so that there needs to be some thought prior to what is said before it is said. Because I think where people say things that they end up regretting becomes because they're either not thinking it through all the way, so they're kind of coming at it from more an emotional state versus a rational state. And that's where like it starts to kind of trigger, right? If rational's on one side, emotional's on the other side, the scale and intensity of that conversation, when it starts to shift more into emotional, is where it becomes more contentious, loud, hard for
Things might be said without, some things might.
Versus if you go all the way like rational, then you're kind of losing the emotional side because it's just pure logic. And so finding where to put that on the scale is that one rule allows us to be very conscious where we're at on that scale.
Yeah. Interesting stuff, man.
I think it comes a little bit because she's a lawyer. Like when we watch a lot of legal, I mean, think about it. If you're in court,
right? Watch what you say, man.
But think about it. If you're like in court, and you know how there's like the time where they're like objection, and they're like, oh, scratch that from the record. Like the jury, whatever that was said, please do not take that into consideration for like your decision making. But the fact that it was said is still going to persist in that person's mind. Yeah.
Regardless of the jury said disagree with it, it's still going to be in the mind.
Absolutely.
You cannot just disagree with that.
Yeah. So if you're in the court, sometimes, you're going to say something knowing it's going to be like scratched from the record, but you know that you planted a seed. And so
and you really cannot break that down.
And in a relationship, that's the equivalent of saying something that you regret saying later. It's a bad seed that's growing for the relationship because you said it that way, right?
That's a good point.
Yeah. Wow.
I think we should end it there. What do you think? That was pretty crazy. It's a good one.
That's wild. Yeah. No, I agree. That's taken a lot for me to kind of digest for a good amount of time. For those that are sticking around for the end of this episode, would love to hear your thoughts on how you approach contentious conversations, and if there's any strategies that you have with friends, family, or significant others to navigate that. Also, if you haven't liked, commented that, and subscribed, please do. We are, at the time of this recording, at 70 subs. We're trying to hit 100 in the next month, which would be amazing. Love to have you a part of that journey, and we will see you in the next one.
Peace.